Welcome to Original Skill Modelling. This is part 2 of Airfix's Vickers Wellington GR Mark 8. Scale is 1:72. In this part, I'm going to be concentrating on the fuselage of the build, preparing it to get installed with the interior. So let's jump into this and see how well I get on. So as you can see there, I've primed everything and I've primed it in white. The reason why the white primer is because a lot of the lower half of the fuselage will be in white paint. As I said in part 1, I'm going to be displaying most of the interior as much as I can. So in order to do that, one half of the fuselage I'm going to have to open up. Initially I was only just going to have one section of the fuselage on and then just leave the other part off. But because this framework is already in place like this airframe, I decided to remove some of it. In the inside, the lattice work is prominent, although it's just plastic, so the mold shows you the lattice work. So what I've done is I took my pin drive, made a little hole, then took my hobby knife and cut out the diamond shapes, leaving the border there. This took an extraordinary amount of time to do, cutting out these tiny little bits of plastic. Now, I could have used a Dremel drill to do this, of course, or any other brand of drill, but there's a danger of melting the plastic if your drill speed is too high, which mine is. So I'm doing it manually. But as I said, this took an extraordinary amount of time to do. So you can see that I'm well into the progress. I'm only doing it on the one side, thankfully, because it does take a lot of time. I think this took me around a course of 3, possibly 4 days to complete. The most difficult part is leaving the border on each section, so you're not cutting it off as I'm using my hobby knife. I am being quite rough with it, but careful as well not to let the knife slip and cut into these little panels. So I'm just coming up to the last parts now. This is where the wing root is, and again, like everything else, I had to be extremely careful removing these. But you can see the amount of material I've removed compared to the initial, the other fuselage, which is just out the box as such. So a lot of material has been removed from the fuselage. And once I've done that, I've just got to clean up all the little boards. There's quite a lot of them, so I'm just making a pass over with the sanding stick just to get all these down. So now I can get onto some of the painting, and the first colour I'm using is Humbrol 56 aluminium, and this is going to be for all the framework. I'm now moving on to Humbrol 110 natural wood, and this is for the door panels and some of the tables inside the interior, as well as the work section on the floor. Next is Humbrol 91 black green, and this is for the raised areas around the interior. And then it's Humbrol 78 cockpit green for the panelling around the bulkheads. As you can see, I'm painting mostly on the spray at this point, but the colours that I've just listed, those are all the colours that I'll be using within the interior. Now generally I would list them as I go along, but it's only those 3 block colours, and they're defined enough to know which colours that I'm using. Once everything was right, it was time to do the first part of the assembly. There's this little panel thing that goes onto the bulkhead and door. Now this part, so you don't need to put it on if you haven't got the interior open, like I'm going to do. So obviously I'm fitting it. There's a couple of location points for it. It should be self-explanatory. There's not much going on in way of fitting these units. They go on quite easily. Same as the bulkheads as well. Just make sure you get them centered on the walkway. There are various seats and things to go on as well. Some come with a bench or table, others are just freestanding, but each one does have its location point clearly marked out. I would suggest if you're doing it not necessarily do it in the order the kit's asking you to. Look at how everything fits together. Try fit it first of all, because you may decide it's better to fit one component first before the other. Going back to 56 aluminium by Humbro, I'm painting the panels on the first clear part here. This goes inside the interior, this part, so it needs to be painted now before fitting. These bulkheads separate the bomb bay area. Interestingly enough, one is clear plastic, the other one is just normal plastic. These do have to be fitted at an angle though. You're going to use a protractor to get them. I use a protractor just to make sure I got the right angle. Or you of course can fit it to the model itself. But either way, it's important to get the angle or you'll find that these won't fit properly. And I did this on both sides. It's worth bearing in mind as well, you maybe want to fit this once it's semi-set so that you do have room to maneuver them in position just in case you get them at the wrong angle. Next is the control stick. There's a central column here and there's one location point for it. And while that's drying in place, I'm just going to be placing on one of the seats. I think this is the pilot seat I'm placing in. And then the section for the control stick goes underneath the seat itself. So I'm carrying on building this interior. There's various little canisters and things like that that go into it. I'm not exactly sure what they're for, but it all makes up part of the interior. I'm using Humbro's 123 Extra Dark Sea Grey here, and this is for the inside of the cockpit, so the cockpit walls, but only at the front and later on at the rear of the aircraft. For the middle section, I'm using Humbro 70 Brick Red, and this will act as the background colour of the interior. I then went back to 56 aluminium Humbro to go over the lattice work to highlight that above the background colour. All this framework is slightly raised, so it makes it a lot easier to paint. Again, like everything else, it does take a steady hand and a bit of time. This would be difficult if you're airbrushing. You would need a lot of masking to do this if you were going down this route. So I'm just come to the end of this painting process here. As you can see, it's starting to stand out now, and in my opinion, it's looking really good. Onto the instrument panel here, and the background was 91 black green I'm using. So these decals, there's only a few to go on, and they're going on in the normal way. So softening it in a bit of water, putting a little bit of decal solution on the part before placing on the decal itself. Before I put the floor section in and wait for the decals to dry on the instrument panel, there's a few bits and pieces that can go into the sidewall of the fuselage. Now, as I said before, you don't really have to put these in if you're having it closed up, but I think they are a nice addition to it. There's some knobs, dials, connective lines to go in. There's what appears to be a stretcher, which I'm putting on now, and various canisters as well. And these are all painted in the colours that I've listed before. I can now put in the floor compartment and the modular for the cockpit. Now each item will just go into its own location point, of course, but just be mindful where you're putting them, because there's several marks for the bulkheads to be fitted in. You may put them in the wrong place. It's some self-explanatory, but you can't easily go wrong, as I found out later on. Next to go on is the instrument panel. I found this quite a tight fit, which is not a bad thing in itself. It just takes a little bit more manoeuvring to get it in the right position. Again, you need to get this in the right position, because when you go to button it up, you won't get sealed properly, or it won't sit square as such. So you want to make sure you stay within the line and guide that's provided in the mould. So I'll finish part 2 here, And if you haven't done so already, why don't you check out the channel for my other videos. If you subscribe to the channel, make sure you hit that notification bell. That way you'll be kept up to date not only with this build but all of my future builds as well, of course. Hit that like button. Don't be afraid to leave a comment, and of course you can share the video. But for now, thank you all very much for watching. Bye bye.